There's a moment, usually quiet, often missed, when she begins to disappear in plain sight. You're sitting together on the couch, maybe watching the same show you've watched for years. Your knee brushes hers, and for a split second she doesn't pull away, but she doesn't lean in either. Her body is there, but her spirit is somewhere else. She smiles at your joke, but the smile doesn't reach her eyes. You make love on Sunday mornings, but it feels more like a ritual than a reunion. You ask if she's okay, and she says she's fine, but somehow fine feels like a locked door you no longer have the key for. This isn't about sex, not really. It's about the silence before sex, the space after touch, the weight of words unspoken, and the question that lingers between bodies that used to ache for each other. Where did the intimacy go? And here's the thing, intimacy isn't about frequency. It's not about stamina or the number of nights you sleep in the same bed. It's about presence. It's about how emotionally safe she feels in your arms long before she ever wants to be naked with you. For so many women, emotional safety is the foreplay, not candlelight, not lingerie, but the unspoken knowing that she can bring her whole self, messy, anxious, tender, powerful, and still feel wanted, not just needed. She wants to be seen, not solved, touched, not tested, held, not handled. But somewhere along the way, modern couples swapped connection for performance. We measure intimacy by activity, not attunement, and women, especially those in long-term relationships, begin to feel the cost. The emotional labor, the invisible load, the question, do I matter here beyond what I give? The truth is, for most women, intimacy starts long before the bedroom and often has very little to do with sex at all. It begins when she feels emotionally held, when her inner world feels safe in your presence, when your curiosity, your attunement, your soft gaze says, you don't have to earn your place with me. You already belong. That's when a woman opens. That's when the walls drop, the breath deepens, the intimacy flows. But if you're trying to build that connection through technique or timing alone, you may be missing the very method she's been yearning for. The kind that isn't taught in magazines or bedroom advice columns, but is backed by the latest psychological research and rooted in something far more ancient, emotional resonance. So, if you've ever wondered why she seems distant when nothing's wrong, or why she used to crave your touch and now hesitates, it's not because she's changed. It's because the intimacy she longs for, the one that lights her up, requires something deeper. And here's the part that might surprise you. That method, it has nothing to do with being better in bed, and everything to do with who you are before you ever get there. It's a strange kind of ache, isn't it? To love someone deeply and still feel alone in the relationship. You're in the same home. You share a bed, a mortgage, maybe children. You talk about groceries and meetings and what to watch on Friday night. But the conversations that used to happen effortlessly, the late night unravelings, the way she used to reach for your hand under the covers, have turned into a daily exchange of tasks and time slots. Somewhere between the dishes and the deadlines, something softer went missing. You notice it in small ways first. She doesn't laugh as often. She pulls her phone into bed more. She's quicker to frustration, slower to forgiveness. There's a guardedness in her that wasn't always there, like she's trying to protect a part of herself that she no longer trusts you to hold gently. And yet, nothing dramatic has happened. No betrayal, no big fight, just the slow erosion of closeness. You ask what's wrong and she says she's tired. But what she doesn't say is that she's tired of trying to explain a kind of loneliness that doesn't make sense on paper. She's tired of longing for a connection that once felt natural and now feels like work. She's tired of sensing that what she needs, emotional depth, tenderness, curiosity, is something you used to offer, but now only deliver in pieces like an afterthought. She misses the version of you who used to look at her, really look, not just in passing, not just when you wanted something, but with presence. The version who asked how her day was and meant it. The one who could sense when she was off, not because she said so, but because you knew her rhythm well enough to feel the shift. You might be trying, in your own way. You might still be bringing home her favorite coffee, putting your hand on the small of her back when you pass by. You think you're showing love, and in your mind it counts. But in hers, something isn't landing. Because what she craves is not just affection, it's emotional attunement. It's that subtle tuning into her frequency that says, I know you, I feel you, I care enough to notice. And when that's missing, a woman begins to shrink, emotionally, sensually, intimately. She stops initiating, not out of rejection, but resignation. She stops sharing her inner world, not out of malice, but protection. She stops expecting you to notice, because disappointment repeated eventually becomes silence. And here's the heartbreaking part. Many men don't even realize it's happening until the distance becomes too loud to ignore, until she withdraws completely, until the sex slows, then stops, until the arguments become more about tone than topic, until the room fills with a tension that neither of you can name. It's not that she doesn't want to be close. It's that she no longer feels emotionally safe enough to risk it. And what makes this even harder is that we live in a culture that teaches men to prove love through action, fixing problems, providing solutions, showing up in practical ways. But emotional safety, that's harder to measure. It's not a checklist. It's a felt experience. It's created in the moments where you pause, listen, stay curious, even when you don't understand her emotions. Especially when you don't. It's built in the way you hold space for her pain without rushing to solve it. In the way you validate what's real for her without feeling blamed or attacked. In the way you show up not to fix her, but to know her, without that emotional ground beneath her. Even the most loving woman can begin to feel unseen. And when a woman feels unseen, desire dries up. Not because she's broken, not because she's cold, but because the part of her that fuels intimacy, her emotional openness, can't breathe without safety. This is the quiet crisis of many long-term relationships, not infidelity, not incompatibility, but the slow extinction of emotional intimacy, the loss of the feeling that you are each other's home. And so she pulls away, and you wonder why, and neither of you has the words, just the age, just the space where closeness used to live. She used to love Saturday mornings, not for the coffee, not for the sunlight that stretched across their hardwood floors, but for the way he used to pull her back into bed when she tried to get up too soon, sleepy, playful, still tangled in the warmth of the night. Back then, intimacy was effortless. They would talk for hours, about books, about childhood, about the strange ache of being alive. He asked questions like he wanted to live inside her mind. She felt seen, alive, desired. But over time, life got louder. Careers took priority. Conversations shifted from dreams to schedule. Sex became more predictable, connection more transactional. Now, on Saturday mornings, she gets up early and makes pancakes. She folds laundry while he reads the news. She doesn't say much. He doesn't notice. She doesn't feel angry. She feels invisible. And when he reaches for her in bed, she sometimes flinches. Not because she doesn't love him, but because her body no longer feels like a home she wants to invite him into. He thinks the problem is physical. Maybe she's stressed. Maybe her libido's dropped. Maybe it's hormonal. But the real reason, the one she doesn't know how to explain, is that she doesn't feel emotionally safe with him anymore. This isn't about whether he loves her. It's about whether she feels understood by him. Because emotional safety for most women is the gateway to intimacy. And once it's compromised, desire doesn't vanish, it hides. Let me bring in what the research tells us. According to Dr. Sue Johnson, the founder of Emotionally Focused Therapy, the most fundamental human need in relationships is emotional responsiveness. When we reach out, with our fear, our joy, our longing, we want to feel that our partner is accessible, responsive, and engaged. Dr. John Gottman, one of the leading researchers on marriage, echoes this. After studying thousands of couples over decades, his findings show that relationships thrive not because couples avoid conflict, but because they turn toward each other in moments of need, even small ones. These bids for connection, like a sigh, a subtle question, a longing glance, are moments where one partner says, "Do you see me?" And when those bids are consistently missed or minimized, emotional safety breaks down. The woman in our story stopped making bids, not because she stopped needing connection, but because it hurt too much when those needs went unnoticed. She once shared her worries about work, her insecurity about aging, her loneliness in their shared silence. He tried to reassure her, "You're overthinking. You're beautiful. It'll be fine." He meant well, but in those moments, she didn't want reassurance. She wanted resonance. She wanted him to pause, to sit beside her discomfort, to say, "Tell me more," to feel with her, not talk her out of her feelings. This is what neuroscience confirms. When someone meets our vulnerability with presence and empathy, our brains release oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Our heart rate sinks. Our nervous system calms. We feel emotionally held. And when women feel emotionally held, their bodies soften. Not because they're performing, but because they feel safe enough to be. This is the part that most relationship advice misses. You can buy flowers, plan date nights, learn new techniques in bed. But if emotional safety is missing, none of it will land. Because for many women, intimacy begins with trust. Not the kind built on fidelity, but the kind that says, "You see the real me, and you still want me." When that trust is strong, desire blooms. But when it's fragile or absent, even the most physical gestures can feel hollow. That's the story of our couple. She still loved him. She still remembered the man who used to trace her thoughts with reverence. But she missed the feeling of being emotionally known. That invisible current that once pulsed between them, now gone quiet. And yet their story isn't a tragedy, because emotional safety is not something you're born with. It's something you build, moment by moment, with presence, curiosity, and care. It doesn't take a grand gesture, not flowers, not weekend getaways, not candlelit dinners, though those can be lovely. What most women crave is something smaller, but far more powerful. It begins in the pause between her breath and your response. In the moment where she says something tender, and you resist the urge to fix, to reassure, to move on. And instead you stay. You look her in the eyes and say, "That makes sense," or even just, "I get it." That's emotional validation. And for women, especially in long-term relationships, it is often the most intimate thing you can offer. It doesn't mean you agree with everything she says. It means you are willing to enter her emotional world without fear or defensiveness. You're not there to argue the facts. You're there to understand her experience. So when she says, I feel like I'm the only one holding things together, your instinct might be to defend yourself. That's not true. I help out. I do plenty. But validation sounds like this. I didn't realize it felt that heavy for you. That must be exhausting. I'm here now. Tell me what it's been like. You're not agreeing that she does everything. You're honoring that for her, it feels that way. And when you meet her there in that felt place, something unlocks. Her nervous system relaxes. Her body begins to trust. And trust, not lust, is what reawakens intimacy. Because for many women, desire lives in the spaces where they feel emotionally safe, where they are not judged for needing too much or for being too emotional, where their inner world is not treated as a puzzle to be solved, but as a garden to be tended. And when you learn to validate her, gently, consistently, without defensiveness, you become the place she turns toward again, not just for comfort, but for closeness. Then there's the second method, one often overlooked, but deeply transformative. Non-sexual attunement, touch that asks for nothing, presence without pressure. It's the moment when you wrap your arms around her waist in the kitchen, not because you want something later, but because you simply want her. It's when you sit beside her on the couch and stroke her hair without agenda, when you notice her shoulders tightening and offer to hold her, not to initiate, but to comfort. These are the moments when her body starts to remember you are safe. Because for many women, the body keeps score. If emotional labor is heavy, if vulnerability has been dismissed, if her needs have felt like burdens, then touch becomes loaded. It doesn't feel like affection. It feels like a demand. But when she begins to experience touch as an extension of your emotional care, not a prelude to sex, but a presence in her life, her guard softens. She stops bracing, she starts feeling. This kind of attunement is not dramatic, it's subtle. But in those small, consistent gestures, a new intimacy grows. One where she no longer flinches. One where she no longer holds back. One where she wants to reach for you, not out of obligation, but out of desire, because you have become emotionally safe again. And for women, safety is not the absence of threat, it is the presence of deep understanding. That's the intimacy method most women prefer. Not because it's trendy, but because it meets them where they live, in the heart, in the nervous system, in the space between words. When you speak the language of emotional safety, her body listens. And when her body listens, it begins to sing. So if you've made it this far, maybe a part of you sees yourself in this story. Maybe you felt the slow drift, the ache of loving someone whose world you no longer feel invited into. Or maybe you're the woman who's gone quiet, not because she stopped caring, but because she stopped feeling heard. And if that's you, if any piece of this touched something in you, I want to say you are not alone. Long-term love is not built on sparks and seduction. It's built in the quiet choices we make to stay curious, to stay present, to reach out instead of turning away. What most women long for isn't perfection. It's not eloquence. It's not endless energy or flawless communication. It's simply to be seen, without having to explain herself first. To be touched without pressure. To be loved not for what she does, but for who she is. And you have the ability to offer that. Truly, every time you choose to ask instead of assume, every time you sit with her emotion instead of solving it, every time you hold her with your presence instead of your performance, you're creating the kind of intimacy that lasts, the kind that doesn't need fireworks to feel alive. The kind that whispers, I'm still here and I still choose you. So now I want to hear from you. Which part of this message touched you the most? Was it the story, the feeling of disconnection, the part about emotional safety and validation, or maybe something else entirely? Leave a comment below, not just for me, but for the others who will read it and realize they're not alone either. Your story matters. Your reflection could be the bridge someone else needs to rebuild their own connection. And if this video stirred something in you, if it helped you understand your partner or yourself a little more deeply, I invite you to subscribe, because this space, it isn't just about advice. It's about remembering what it means to be human together, to love better, softer, stronger, not perfectly, but fully. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening with your heart. And thank you, most of all, for caring enough to try. I'll see you in the next video.